this subject usually, but I found him to be wise, intelligent and wise, and also pointing a path for us that I think is always very helpful person. He runs the Walter and Duncan Gordon Foundation now, and I'd like to ask Tom if he'd be kind enough to come forward and say a few words.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and thanks to Murray and the committee for organizing this event to try and bring attention to the necessity to try and eradicate nuclear weapons. I want to very briefly bring to your attention and refer to something called the Hiroshima Declaration, a plea for zero nuclear weapons. That is an organization called the Interaction Council, of which I'm the Secretary General, and members of the Interaction Council are former leaders and heads of state, Mr. Kretchen, Bill Clinton, Helmut Schmidt from Germany, about 40 of them. And we met recently in Hiroshima, and when Murray was talking about one of our colleagues who has joined the campaign to work on disarmament in Canada, anybody who's been to Hiroshima and has met any of the survivors never forgets those meetings. They are so poignant. And one of the survivors who we met who spoke to the leaders, a very elderly gentleman, was a young boy that August, and actually told us that he was with his father in a little farm outside Hiroshima, and they actually heard the airplane come over, and he saw a little black piece come out of the airplane. So he actually witnessed the first atomic bomb, and broke down in tears as he told us that story. So the Interaction Council on the Hiroshima Declaration, and has just brought a book out of the global agenda that we meet on, including that declaration. I actually asked my publisher to send some copies, so about 30 have arrived. So if it's a gift, I think they're at the back of the room, and so you're all welcome to take one of those books. And there are several subjects covered, but one of them is the ongoing nuclear priority that the Interaction Council has, and the Hiroshima Declaration. What we did in Hiroshima with the leaders was really make a public statement at that time that nuclear weapons should be stigmatized, they should be banned, and they should be eliminated before they abolish us. And the assessment of this meeting is that we have been living under the potential nuclear catastrophe for a couple of generations now. But as we approach and as we are in the 21st century, though the absolute number of weapons have come down, it has perhaps never been so dangerous as it is now, for two reasons. The first is that we know that if anybody has these weapons, it's an incentive for others to get them. There are about 9 countries which have them now. Not all have signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. It is a continuing incentive to expand the nuclear club by not moving toward the goals of disarmament which the superpowers have agreed to in the Non-Proliferation Treaty. We will never rid ourselves of these weapons unless we stop their spread, and we will not stop their spread unless we make moving to zero a systemic and ongoing process so that people can see progress. The second point, perhaps even more profound, is that the whole theory at the top, that the acquisition of these weapons would balance each other, begins to fall apart when there's the possibility of non-state actors acquiring them. You can't use détente against ISIS or Al-Qaeda. The détente theory falls apart when there's a chance of rogue players with nuclear weapons. And that is not a science fiction plot. We know that there has been extensive efforts to try and acquire fissionable material by non-state actors. We know that the controls on fissionable materials are quite weak and non-existent in some places. Pakistan alone has been a serial proliferator of its nuclear warfare equipment. This is enormously dangerous, and our whole theory of the taunt beloved by the Henry Kissingers and so on does not apply in a world where there may be a spread to private organizations. And that's what we're facing. So therefore, the Council in its declaration, as the work of the members of the Order of Council here, called for a comprehensive nuclear treaty. Secondly, called upon the General Assembly of the United Nations to declare that the use of nuclear weapons was in fact a crime against humanity, to bring the concept of a humanitarian emergency to apply to the issue of nuclear weapons, that those of us who are not nuclear states still have a right and indeed an obligation to do what we can when there is a humanitarian emergency emerging. I remember when Mr. Trudeau, I was with him then as one of his advisors, began his peace mission on the nuclear issue in '83 and '84, to the intense annoyance of both the Russians and the Americans, because they felt they were members of the nuclear club, and what were we doing, trying to give them advice, since we didn't have them. We were not part of the nuclear calculations, so therefore our point of view could be ignored as it was. If one applies a humanitarian ethos, though, it is a measure to encourage the whole world to put pressure, just not on those powers that have acquired these heinous weapons. So that's an important framework, and that's an attempt to recast and reframe the debate, so that the work of groups like this has every kind of legitimacy, and it is not just excluded to those who negotiate at the NPT. We also called for practical steps, such as a declaration at a minimum of no first use. And then secondly, there should be no modernization of nuclear weapons. The goal should be to get rid of the damn things, not making them more effective and better. And yet there's been a massive modernization to increase the effectiveness and the through weight and the power of these horrible weapons, both by the United States and by Russia. So, I'm delighted to be with you. This is important work to try to raise this issue into public consciousness. Many groups are trying around the world. It is hard to get attention to it. The news is not all bad. There are serious negotiations underway as I speak with Iran and with the United States and powers there, and hopefully members of the Iranian government are part of the Interaction Council, that a consensus can occur that will not add Iran to the nuclear club, yet meet their needs, their desires for peaceful nuclear power. So that is a good step. But for every good step, there have been steps backwards. And the essential message I have for you is that this is not a small group, it's not alone. It's joined by people around the world. It is joined by important organizations who are mounting the fight. We have a tremendous effort, though, to try to put this issue on the agenda. Many people think that its salience has passed. Our argument, and my argument to you tonight, is that the dangers actually have never been so profound, and never has it been more important for Canada to make its moral voice felt. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Tom. I'd now like to ask Carolyn Acker, who's the founder of Pathways to Education Canada, to come and say a few words to us on the same topic. Not exactly the same topic, quite a different one. Okay.
No, I was trying to figure out how to segue from Tom over to here, but anyway, I know your brother Bruce. I know David. I've worked for years with him. I think he's terrific. And actually, I know your brother.
Which one? I've got three.
Well, the one that's the university.
Yeah.
And
the one with hair. Yeah.
Yeah, when we put Pathways in Winnipeg. Yeah. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And Murray, I want to say that you're a real peace activist. And I really thank you for calling me and inviting me to come and help and be part of this work. Like many of you, I guess, we got the phone call from this lovely gentleman who proceeded to tell me who he was and what he was doing, but I support this ban, and of course. And the most perplexing part of this is that it makes no sense to me at all why we would have a biological weapons convention and a chemical weapons convention, but not a nuclear weapons convention. I mean, this is total, my head, I get dissonance there from that. But anyway, Murray wanted me to say a bit about the work that I did because he wants again to emphasize our differences. We're all coming from different places, but we're all committed to this cause. And I did a lot of my work in community health in low-income communities. I spent a lot of time in the Regent Park community, running the Regent Park Community Health Center. And, you know, I went in the early 90s and we grew our budget from $2 million to $6.8 million. We were implementing Dr. Fraser Mustard's work, doing lots of early years work, 0 to 6. I wanted the kids in Regent Park to start kindergarten at the same level as kids from more privileged backgrounds. You know what? Instead of things getting better, this big investment increase, things were getting worse. There were more and more murders every year in this really low-income community here in Toronto. And in the year 2000, there were 9 murders right in that community. And I was wanting to break the cycle of poverty. How do you break the cycle of, well, there's one way to break the cycle of poverty. And it's the same thing you do with all your own children. You tell them that they must succeed at school. That's their job. Because they won't be able to survive. Most jobs now are requiring post-secondary education, and you need to know, so this gives me a little chance to tell you that, so you can advocate. The wealthiest kids, the dropout rate is like 6 to 13%, and in the lowest income communities across this country, the dropout rate is 50 and sometimes over 60 and even 70%. We developed a vision. It caused us to work with the community, and we did something that nobody had done before. We phoned the school board to find out the dropout rate for the kids that lived in those postal codes, and we were told we had a 56% high school dropout rate. So I immediately knew why the kids were killing each other. They had no future, they had no hope. And the young people were getting involved in crime and drugs because that was the only way to make money. We created this program by using action research and hearing from the people. We as professionals did not say, this is what you need. The parents told us,